Hello there, and welcome to episode 12 of my series 100 Casts, in which I will be casting over 100 games of League of Legends. These shoutcasts are going to be mainly for my practice, since I do intend on becoming a shoutcaster, and before I try to do so and apply for any serious position as one, I would like to get some practice under my belt, and so shoutcasting over these replays is going to be that practice. If you'd like to get your replay featured on this series, there will be instructions on how to do that in the description below the video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Starting off here, I'd just like to say that this is in fact a fairly low-level match. I believe the person who sent it in to me is in lower bronze, and so I'm likely going to be out of breath and have a sore throat at the end of it because there's likely going to be lots and lots of action because lower-level players generally find themselves in situations where they fight each other a lot more often, make a lot more mistakes. They overextend a lot more often, chase people a lot more often, and are much more aggressive, on the whole, than higher level players. Anyways, let's get down to the team comps. For blue side, we have a Lucian and a Nami in the bot lane, which is a pairing that has quite a bit of damage, Nami having a large amount of damage in her kit with the extra 3 procs of that slow on Tidecaller's Blessing, as well as ebb and flow's damage at early levels, because the base value on it is fairly high, is quality poke. Very good poke, because not only does it hurt your enemy, it also heals you, and you can also possibly hurt both enemies or heal you and your AD carry as a support Nami. It's more difficult to do that. I find it's actually fairly difficult to get the extra bounce because it's difficult to line up having 3 people in a good enough situation and close enough to you or your AD carry in a situation in lane, that is, to get that extra bounce, to get the ebb and flow to bounce not just from you to one person or one person to you or something, but from you to a person to another person, which it can do. Anyways, moving from the bot lane, in the mid on blue side we have a Lux, which is a pick I don't see too often nowadays because of the prevalence of very mobile assassins and such in the mid lane. Lee Sin, choosing to start at his red buff, is going to throw his Q over the wall to it and then walk up to it, bringing it fairly low now. He's going to smite it down, take that. The Lee Sin in the jungle there is a Lee Sin in the jungle on blue side, as well as a Darius in the top lane against a Garen for purple team. The Darius, I believe, having the advantage in that lane, though, simply because his bleed passive is very, very effective at countering Garen's passive, because every time the bleed ticks, it resets the cooldown on Garen's perseverance passive and makes it harder for him to regenerate his health in the lane. Down in the bot lane for purple team, though, we have a bit of an odd lane comp. We have a Ryze support with a Miss Fortune AD carry. And I thought it was going to be a Karma support, so in the little menu at the bottom of the screen there, I did line up the Karma and the Nami as being opposed, because I thought it was going to be a Karma support and a Ryze mid, which seemed a bit more reasonable. The Darius walking under tower there just to ignite the Garen flashing away in a bit of a panic, as down in the bot lane we have Ryze snaring the Lucian, who takes a good amount of damage from a double up from the Miss Fortune. The Garen still here in the top lane, popping a health pot and spinning on the Darius. The Darius, using his Q near the tower, does get that bleed stack onto Garen, and because of the damage proc from it, he takes a tower hit from the tower as he goes too close to it while Garen is bleeding. The Garen walking up with his Q and in Ignite is going to try and take out the Darius, but does not go down, nearly goes down himself to the dot from the Darius, but luckily enough some minions die before he does and give him the XP to level up and save his life with the extra health he gains from the level up right there. Speaking of level up, Ryze just levels up in the bot lane, being level 3 to the enemy's level 2. The purple side bot lane is pushing up and gaining the advantage here, with MF having just a few CS lead over the Lucian. Back towards the mid lane, we do have that Karma in the mid lane that I thought was going to be support, but AP Karma is certainly a viable pick for the mid lane, and has quite a lot of poke early in the game, and has managed to bring Lux down fairly low, but she also has gone down pretty low as she gets bound by the Lux. But we see down in the bot lane, a fight is going on. The Miss Fortune out of mana, though, not able to keep following up onto that Lucian, who got back under the safety of his tower. In the top lane, the Darius, taking those tower hits earlier, is now in a hurting position. He's quite low health and is being pushed back onto by the Garen, who, because of his passive, has regenerated quite a bit of health. However, Lee Sin is up in the top lane, going to be ganking, but the camera still wants to stay down here in the bot lane where a lot of stuff is happening. The Lucian getting the first blood onto the Ryze, as in top lane, the Lee Sin is trying to chase the Garen through the minions. The Lee Sin does get the kill up at top as Lucian gains another kill for himself down in bot lane, and that is 3 kills already on the board at just prior to 5 minutes. As we see the Rammus is ganking here in the mid lane, going to be powerballing in as the Karma lands the snare. Rammus going to go into his defensive ball curl to go under that tower and get the last auto attack onto the Lux, who had tried to flash away into the tower safety, but wasn't quite far enough away from the Rammus, who did manage to get that kill for himself, putting him at 1-0 and getting the first kill on the board for Purple Team, who is about 5,000 gold behind, more like 6,000 gold behind. No, more than that. I'm reading the numbers incorrectly. The Rammus actually flashing forward and powerballing onto the Darius, taunting him and going into defensive ball curl to return some of the damage from those auto attacks that he was forced to use on the Rammus, and killing the Darius. That is a 2-0 Rammus now at 5.5 minutes into the game, and that is putting Purple Team back into the game here, only about 800 gold behind now. Karma going to be basing in the mid lane as the Lux returns to the lane. Down in the bot lane, we have Misfortune and Ryze. The Misfortune farming it up. Ryze support, I've actually never seen that before. I can't say that he's going to be entirely useless. He does have the snare, but probably you don't want to be running a support of which you can only say that he won't be entirely useless, because Ryze usually is a hyper carry and usually does need some farm to be able to get going into the late game, as we see Lucian and Nami engaging onto the Ryze, who's taken quite low, not having any mobility to get out of that situation, but the Nami herself goes nearly down to the Misfortune. The Misfortune flashing forward, does land that final auto attack as the Nami flashes away, getting a kill for herself there. The Ryze coming back in to help the Misfortune out, does go down to the Lucian, but it's a double kill for Purple Team down in the bot lane. Misfortune getting 2 kills for herself, and certainly going to be happy with that, coming back into this lane, going to be only 1 kill behind the Lucian now, and only about, and a bit ahead in terms of CS, as in the top lane the Darius is going onto the Garen, getting a ton of dots ticking onto him, lots of bleed stacks, and that Ignite going to be taking out the Garen. The Rammus powerballing into the lane, but perhaps biting off a bit more than he can chew here. The Darius going to land all 5 stacks of his passive onto him, press Q one more time, and then ult him, jumping into the air with that axe and coming down and slicing the Rammus in half, despite his powerball shell. I mean, despite his defensive ball curl shell, trying to prevent that damage from coming through. Darius now on the tower in the top lane has brought it down to about half health, as the Garen is coming back to the lane, walking up it, trying to get there in time to stop the Darius from getting the tower. Ryze walking forward and snaring the Lucian, doing some good damage to him, the Lucian not having Nami around to be able to help him defend himself against the enemy team's bot lane. As in the top lane, Darius does get that turret, making it a 1-for-0 turret lead for Blue Team, and the 6-4 kill lead, putting them ahead in terms of gold by a little bit up there in the top, in the scoreboard. They're about, I hate saying the gold totals because I always feel like an idiot if I get them wrong, but they are about 2,000 gold ahead, as Lee Sin's down here in the bot lane with the red buff, going to be coming in, trying to land that Q into the Misfortune. Is he going to throw it? No, he doesn't. Maybe he threw it earlier and I didn't notice. As the Misfortune turns around and ults onto 2 members of the Blue Team. We swap over to mid lane, though, as Karma lands the empowered Soul Flare onto the Lux, then gets hit by the Lux Laser as we swap back down to bot lane. No kills going down in mid lane, and here's Rammus down in the bot lane. The Misfortune getting a killing spree onto that Lee Sin, as in the mid lane, just barely Karma wins the duel, using her Ignite to take that kill. The Lux, not having brought Ignite, doesn't have quite as much damage in that matchup as the Karma did. The Lux having brought the heal instead of the Ignite, and it wasn't up at the time. So she does go down, giving Karma a kill and putting Karma at 1-0. Both Karma and Lux going to be going for that mana sustain in lane, buying the Chalice, so that they can continually spam out their spells, both of them being fairly long-range pokey champions. The Karma being a bit shorter range, but having a bit higher damage, at least earlier on in the game, as the Darius is forcing the Garen's flash up here in the top lane. The Darius already having a Tiamat, going to be doing quite a lot of damage. The Garen being 0-2, not really in the same sort of position that the Darius is in, not really able to duel with him, as the Ryze walks forward and lands a snare into Lucian, who nearly goes down, but a nice bubble from Nami going to land on both members of Purple Team in the bot lane. The 80 carry for bot lane Miss Fortune getting a rampage now, though, as Lucian nearly takes her out, but goes down right before he can do so. Miss Fortune in a bit of a pickle here, going to go down to the ebb and flow from Nami, as Lee Sin is down in the bot lane, going to be ganking and taking out the Ryze. 2 members of bot lane on purple side going down, and 1 on blue side going down, but up in the top lane, the Darius gets shut down by the Rammus and Garen. The Rammus now 3-1, has a Giant's Belt for himself already, in addition to that Spirit Stone, whereas the Lee Sin is only just now going to be completing his Spirit of the Elder Lizard next time he backs, most likely. He does have the 2 Longswords and the Spirit Stone already, though he is now near mid lane, going to be going for that Karma. Lands the Q, but she's too fast and already under her turret after the Q connects, and does not want to follow in on that Sonic Wave, just giving Lux some time to free farm. Though Rammus is now here, going to be powerballing in onto the Lux, as Karma lands the empowered Soul Flare, and then the Tether. The Rammus finishing off the kill there, going 4-1 now, doing a lot of work around this map, speeding around in that Powerball, and getting a lot of ganks off. Darius and Garen going at it again in the top lane. The Darius, having built lots of damage, is going to be able to take out that Garen, getting 5 stacks of his passive onto him, pulling him back when he tries to use his Q, Decisive Strike, to run out of range, and then dropping his ult onto him with the 5 stacks, and being able to do a whole lot of true damage, and take out that Garen, who is now building a Brutalizer, and he has a health crystal there too. Looks like he's going to be going for the Black Cleaver, which is a decent Garen item. Not the pick I would have gone with in this matchup, because he's a bit behind at this point. He probably wants to build some tankiness, but to each their own. He might want to be roaming out of that lane, and he might want to have enough damage that he's able to actually take out one of the enemy squishy champions by himself if he has to. Perhaps the Ryze with his lack of mobility, or the Karma with Karma or the Miss Fortune with their lack of large amounts of health. The Miss Fortune ulting over the wall there, flashing under the tower and getting a kill onto the Nami, while Rammus, nearly going down to the tower, is going to find Lee Sin in a bush, who uses Tempest Cripple to take him out instantly. Kicks the Miss Fortune away, but he might be in a bit more trouble than he thinks right now, as the Miss Fortune does have quite a lot of burst damage, already having finished the BF sword and having 2 Doran's blades, sorry, as in the top lane we see Darius fighting the Garen again, landing 5 stacks of his passive onto the Garen, able to outtrade the Garen in pretty much every instance because of that extra magic damage from the passive, and the fact that Garen has not built very much tankiness at this point. He is taking a lot of damage. He gets ignited, has 5 stacks of the passive burning on him. The Darius flashes forward to get the last auto attack just to confirm the kill, and does get another kill for himself, going 4-2 in this lane now in the top lane. Has a 30 CS lead, already having taken out the tower as well. The Karma just missing the empowered Soulflower there, does land the second proc of her binding though, drops the ignite and lands a unempowered Soul Flare, and that is enough damage to take out the Lux in the mid lane, giving a kill over to Karma, as we see the Rammus rolling into the top lane, getting another kill for himself, as the Miss Fortune and the Rammus both roamed up to top to take out the Darius, who had pushed up fairly far. Down in the bot lane, Ryze is left all by himself against the enemy bot lane, who are going to push up to this tower now. They have a minion wave and they want to do some damage to the turret, though they're not going to be able to, as Ryze with his ult is going to be able to clear that wave pretty effectively. Going support, he doesn't have very much damage, but he has built a few mana items, and when he pops his ult and does that AoE damage and is able to spam out those abilities, he is able to clear that wave quickly enough to prevent the blue team from getting any serious damage onto his turret down in the bot lane. But in the mid lane, actually, I will get to that in just a second, as Ryze is being engaged onto the Lucian and the Nami. His flash was forced there because of the Nami bubble. He had to flash to avoid getting stunned up, as in the mid lane, as I was saying, the purple team is pushing up, and they did take out that mid tower. The culling landing onto Ryze of his minions, though, coming in time to block some of the culling shots for him and keep him alive, as Miss Fortune and Rammus have roamed down to the bot lane. The Rammus walking through the minions and then using his ult for some extra damage, flashing forward onto the Lucian, not quite in range to taunt him, does get in range eventually, taunts him back onto him. The Lucian maybe, yes, does escape here with barely any health, but the Nami, being caught between a rock and a hard place, does go down to the rest of Purple Team's damage, putting Purple Team now 15-11 on the map and about 1,000 gold up in terms of gold on the board there. The Darius getting Decisive Strike and then spun on by the Garen. The Garen going to be nearly going down, but a timely Karma Shield might save his life. He is still bleeding. He does bleed out from the Darius passive, does go down in the end there. Sadly, the Karma Shield was not enough to prevent all of that damage from the 5 stacks of Darius' passive, which he had gotten stacked up onto the Garen, 5 stacks being the maximum amount that Darius can stack onto one person. A blue team turret going down in the bot lane, Misfortune being left alone to push by herself, is going to be able to take that one out with the attack speed buff off of her W. She does get bubbled up by Nami though, and Lucian is back here in the lane as well. She uses her hail of bullets to slow down the enemy team, but she gets exhausted now, certainly not going to be able to survive through this one. She does get shut down by the Lucian. Lee Sin shows up, but he was not needed. He's just here to clean out some minions and maybe contest the dragon or go for a push on the bot lane turret here. There is a I'm going there ping on the dragon. I don't quite know which team's that's from. Probably not Rammus though, as he's here in the mid lane, powerballing in behind the Lux, landing a taunt onto her. The Lux not having a tower to fall back onto, and being CC'd enough that she couldn't, even if she wanted to, or even if she did have a tower, does go down. The Darius here, repeating history, going to be walking up to the Garen and once again landing 5 stacks of his passive onto him and doing quite a bit of damage, coming out ahead in that trade. The Darius just sitting at home up in this top lane, going to be pushing it constantly while his team is taking Dragon down on the other side of the map. The Lee Sin, Nami, and Lucian being enough to take out this Dragon. The Nami actually getting the last hit there as the Lee Sin smited a little bit early, but it's not that big a deal. It just means that those conservation stacks that the Lee Sin might have had are not going to be used on the Dragon, but the blue team still does get the Dragon and all that global gold for themselves, which brings them back only to a 500 gold deficit in this game. As they find Karma pushed up a bit far, she does use her speed buff to try and escape. She manages to dodge the bubble. The Ardent Blaze does land onto her, and Darius was in a bush waiting for her this whole time. She does flash out of the Darius grab, though. Very good flash there as she's running away. The Darius with his speed buff from his passive, though, might be able to catch up to her. The Nami flashing forward, missing another bubble. The Darius getting bound by the Karma Snare. The Lucian now dashing forward over the wall, getting hit by the Karma Slow, though. Might go down to the Garen. No, he manages to escape. The Garen not being enough, but the Karma looks like she has escaped. The Garen, though, is not able to escape, not nearly as easily as the Karma, who has many, many methods of going faster and kiting and snaring and doing many of these things. But meanwhile, while blue team was chasing that Karma up in the top lane, purple team was pushing down the bot lane with their AD carry and support, as Rammus powerballs into 4 members of the enemy team underneath his turrets and takes one of them out and just leaves, being too tanky for blue team to be able to seriously try and take him out under that tower. The Lux down here in the bot lane going to try and prevent purple team from taking any more than they already have, but I don't know if she's going to be enough. They have quite a large minion wave, and Misfortune is able to do a lot of damage to those turrets, but Ryze gets caught by a Lux snare under the tower, goes down to the Lux, that final spark being enough damage after the snare and the Lucent Singularity land, as Rammus going quite low next to the Darius, but the Darius not having enough damage to take him out before he can escape. The Misfortune trying to flash away from Lucian's culling there as Lucian has back to deal with her, but not being able to flash as far enough out of range to be able to avoid a few more of the culling bullets, which do take her down. She had gone down quite low from trying to duel the Lux under the tower, and goes down into the end to the Lucian, who backed from the top lane and came back to defend his inhibitor turret. Blue team pinging onto the mid lane turret for purple team. They want to get a turret. They want to get another turret onto the board for themselves. They do only have one right now in the top lane, where Darius pushed that one over after winning the lane fairly hard against the Garen. The Garen, though, pushing back up into the top lane, might be wanting to go for this turret since Darius is all the way back at his base and might not be able to defend for a little while. In the bot lane, though, Ryze has found the Lucian, is walking straight up to him. Looks like he wants to snare him. No, he decides not to. Actually, no, he decides to. He doesn't seem to realize that he's not in a position to one-on-one duel the enemy AD carry, though, and he does have to flash away after going quite low from the burst from that Lucian. Lee Sin sitting in this bush waiting for the Garen to come face check it. The Garen does wisely place a ward into it before doing so, though, and gets hit up by the Lee Sin with the but does manage to kill the Lee Sin, actually, off-screen there, as we swap down to the bot lane where Karma has roamed down, and so has the Rammus. The Rammus now unstoppable, 10-2, already built a Thornmail as well as a Giant's Belt on top of that for the health in addition to those resistances from the Thornmail. As Darius has returned in time to top lane to stop the Garen from taking the tower out entirely, but the Garen did get a good amount of damage onto that turret, having pushed up for a while there in the top lane. The Rammus diving under a tower with his Powerball and taunting the Lux, does get snared by the Lux. However, Karma is here now, going to be landing the snare. The second proc of the snare does go off, but Karma takes a ton of burst from the Finale's Flunken from Lux and goes down under the turret from that final spark and the turret shots, as we see Darius pulling the Garen up next to him and trading a bunch of damage onto him, going to be staying in this top lane for even longer, just going to be pushing up onto this tower. He does manage to get 5 stacks of his passive once more onto the Garen and presses R on him, taking him out after bringing him down to about a third health, and then bringing him down to about, well, exactly 0 health, as he then gets the inner turret in the top lane and is still pushing up to that inhibitor turret. Somebody from Purple Team has got to go and deal with this guy, or else he's going to be rolling into their base soon, as the Lee Sin gets the shutdown on Rammus, who is trying to invade onto him with low health. The Miss Fortune, though, managing to get a kill onto the Lee Sin, but then getting caught by the enemy bot lane comp who roamed up into their jungle. Darius pulling the Karma, who came to try and stop him. Going to be doing a ton of damage to the Karma. Doesn't have his ult up, though, and can't finish off the kill. The Karma, though, going quite low, still bleeding. Might go down. No, does not go down. The bleed wears off when she's at about 100 health. One more auto attack from the Darius, and she would have been dead in that situation, but thankfully he didn't have the ability to weave one more auto in there in that trade, and so she does manage to live and deter the Darius from taking an inhibitor turret in the top lane. Both teams having lanes on opposite sides of the map that are open all the way to the inhibitor turret. This is really anybody's game still at this point, with only about 1,000 gold difference between the two teams. The Rammus powerballing into mid lane, going to be going for this Lux, does get snared though, the Lux managing to walk away without incident, throwing her Lucent Singularity down on the ground to slow the Rammus and deter him from chasing after the powerball ends. The Rammus does have, actually did not go with Boots of Mobility. He was going quite quickly, so I thought he might have. He went with the Ninja Tabby, actually, to combat the high amount of damage that Darius is putting out, as up in the top lane we see Garen gaining another turret for Purple Team, who is now at 4 and 2 in terms of turrets and has a decent gold lead for themselves on the board because of the advantage in global objectives that gives, and team gold as well. The Lucian playing the lead man for Blue Team here down in the mid lane, where only 2 members of Purple Team are fighting it out with 4 of Blue Team, as we swap up to the top lane where Darius is repeating history one more time and going after the Garen and taking him out. As we see the Miss Fortune caught out in the middle of way too many ultimates from blue side. She goes down to a combination of the culling and the laser from Lux. Does not really stand a chance in that situation. Got caught out a bit by the Lux binding. The Karma able to clear out the wave, though, with her empowered Soul Flare, as Ryze runs up and snares the Lux. The Lux getting hit by the Powerball from Rammus, but Rammus walking right past her, instead choosing to try and take out this Lucian. Maybe being tempted by that double buff, eventually settles for the Nami, who has been right next to him this whole time, trying to kite him off the Lucian. His Powerball is back up, though, and he does get bound under the tower by the Lux and is forced away because of this after the snare from the Lux ends. But Karma coming around the back, throwing out a wonderful empowered Soul Flare, going to take out the low-health Lucian, who is trying to hide under his turret. Then igniting the Lee Sin, might be able to take him out. No, she does not. The Ignite wears off in time for the Lee Sin to survive, as up in the top lane, Darius forced to back away as Miss Fortune has respawned now and came up to the top lane to help out her friendly Garen. Rammus coming around towards the top lane. Doesn't seem to want to go for this gank, though, as his teammates are fairly far away and would not be able to follow up in time, and he might go down himself to the Darius, who still does have quite a bit of damage output at this point in the game. Lux pushing up mid, dropping that Lucent Singularity onto the wave, and throwing out some auto attacks onto the affected minions, as Garen is pushing out top lane, and really action across the map for once is at a lull. No one fighting or killing anybody across the map, just both teams returning to farming. Bot lane down in the bot lane, farming out that. Lucian getting the CS there, as Karma with the double buffs is pushing up the mid lane, going to throw a Soul Flare over the wall into the Wraith camp just to check and see if it's there, see if someone from the enemy team is doing it. She stops Lux's back under the tower with another Soul Flare, and she's going to be pushing under the tower now, getting rid of that minion wave pretty effectively with repeated Qs to the back line of the caster minions, which insta-burst them and take them out in one hit with the amount of AP that the Karma has, who has actually built a death cap at this point, which is an interesting build. Usually Karmas go with a lot of Magic Pen because they have incredibly high base damage, but here we see Rammus rolling into the bot lane, taunting the Lucian inside of Miss Fortune's ult. He just gets melted by the combined damage there of the armor pen. Rammus' taunt actually does shred someone's armor for a short time while he has them taunted, so that armor pen plus the hail of bullets that come out of Miss Fortune's ult bullet time did incinerate that Lucian, who was a bit too far up in the bot lane. But Darius getting the kill onto Ryze there, doing a lot of burst all at once, is going to kill him easily, as Purple Team does take out his turret, though, right before he goes down. The Karma nearly going down to the Lee Sin, but she manages to escape with barely any health left with her shield and speed buff, which are both one ability, the shield buff, the speed shield. And Garen, now stuck in the enemy's base, is going to have to walk under the tower to get out, but he's very tanky, doesn't seem to mind that one bit, as Miss Fortune was soloing the dragon this whole time and gets a dragon for Purple Team. Rammus flashing out of the bubble there that would have spelled his doom. He would have been bubbled all alone under an enemy tower with an enemy AD carry and Nami nearby. So it's very good that he flashed there. Good reflexes on his part, but it is a flash burn. So that is a small victory for Blue Team, who have just lost a tower and a dragon, so they need all the small victories they can get. Lux missing her binding by just a few pixels there onto the Miss Fortune. Would have been nice for Blue Team if that had hit. The Miss Fortune choosing, after getting the Bloodthirster as a first item, going for the Thornmail after that, wanting to protect herself against the attack damage from the enemy team in the form of the Lucian, Lee Sin, and Darius, who are all doing a good amount of damage. The Lee Sin being 6 and 5 with that Ravenous Hydra already, and the Darius himself having a Ravenous Hydra as well. So the Thornmail going to be preventing a lot of that damage, though the Miss Fortune not having very much health behind it. It's really only going to be flat resistances without much health to stack on top of the resistances and make it more effective. The Bloodthirster shield would work with the resistances, and so maybe there's a bit of synergy there between the Thornmail and the Bloodthirster, and that might be the reasoning behind this build. It is a bit of an odd build, though, and I'd like to see how it works out for her later on in this match. The Darius behind the enemy team is going to be trying to pull a flanking maneuver. The Rammus with his Banshee's Veil is going to run up. The Lee Sin taking out the Rise behind enemy lines. Gonna go down, though, in the end, being a bit stranded from the rest of his team, giving a killing spree over to the Garen, who's coming back into this game now after leaving the top lane and getting out of that unfavorable matchup against the Darius. As Miss Fortune drops her ult on multiple members of the enemy team. Does go down to the Darius, though, after getting pulled in under tower and then ulted by the Darius, leaping up in the sky with that axe and coming down on her head. But that was a wonderful Soul Flare from the Karma, taking out the Nami and allowing Rammus to finish off the other two remaining members of Blue Team, as Purple Team aces Blue Team, only losing 2 members themselves, and are now on this mid lane turret. Sadly, they lost their AD carry, so they're not able to take it out all that quickly, but they are able to take it out eventually. But some members of Blue Team are now reviving. Lux going to be up in just 1 second, and Lee Sin already up. I don't know if they're going to be able to get this inhibitor. They might, actually, with the Garen using Decisive Strike as a auto-attack reset. And yep, Garen getting that 50 gold for breaking the inhibitor, getting the kill credit on the inhibitor, and running away with Decisive Strike immediately afterwards. Purple Team getting out after getting an ace and an inhibitor on the mid lane. That team fight putting them about 7,000 gold in the lead. Garen going to be stealing the red buff. Going to take him a little while to do it, though. His damage output is not that high, having only a black cleaver for damage, as Lee Sin discovers him trying to do it. Lee Sin going to be doing some damage, though. He does have that Ravenous Hydra and Spirit of the Elder Lizard, and he does get the shutdown onto the Garen, ulting him away and then landing an auto attack as he flies away, and then getting a double kill onto the Rise, who came to try and help out his Garen, but was a bit too little too late, and then goes down immediately afterwards for his efforts, giving the double kill over to Lee Sin, who is now 9 and 6. And has built a decent amount of damage, but seems to be going towards the tanky route now, getting a bunch of health in the Ruby Crystal and the Giant's Belt. Might be going for a Warmogs there to get just a lot of health to help him tank through the enemy team's damage. The Rammus powerballing into 4 members of the enemy team simply does not care about their damage, goes down to only half health from the focus of 4 members of Blue Team for a solid 3 or 4 seconds there. Does not manage to make anything happen for his team, though, as no one else was nearby enough to take advantage of the Rammus's insane ability to tank there, as Darius is back up in his natural habitat, the top lane, going to be trading it out with the Garen, both auto-attacking each other. Now that both of them have some tanky items, this is sort of a wet noodle fight, as they both do barely any damage to each other with each auto-attack, but they have to consider their positioning very well, and consider each other's ultimates well, as the Darius had bought a Maw of Malmortius, which is why it looked like he didn't take any damage from the Garen's ult there. The Garen's ult being purely magic damage and doing damage to someone when they're low. Basically, Maw of Malmortius is the perfect counterplay to Garen's ult, because once you're low, you get a magic damage absorbing shield, which is going to absorb the magic damage from Garen's ult. In the top lane, though, Darius, left unchecked by the purple team, is going to be taking out the inhibitor tower, might be on the inhibitor as well, but the Lee Sin leaping in onto the Karma, going to be able to take her out, but goes down to the Ryze support after that. The Misfortune with the Thornmail is going to be clearing out these minions now and waiting for the enemy team to try and come do something about her, because she is in the middle of their base with a super minion wave pushing up. Might be going for the Nexus turrets here, but she is all alone. Gonna have to be careful. Gets hit by the bubble under the tower, takes some damage. Still gonna be here, though. Gonna be pushing onto that turret with that super minion. The Darius respawning with Home Guard boots, running up and flashing forward and grabbing her and pulling her under the turret. Not even needing to use his ult there. The damage from the turret shots and his bleed passive, as well as, well, his attacks and his abilities, enough to bring her down without him having to use his ultimate. The Ryze going to be trying to do this Wraith camp here. Doesn't have very much damage output or much health. He might want to be a bit careful here. The rate he's going, he might be dying to a Wraith. He does snare it and walk away. Nearly going down to the Wraith camp there. That might have been... That definitely would have been bad if that had happened. A little bit embarrassing too, though he does survive. Is the Lee Sin going to find him? No, he walks right past. Lee Sin is blind after all and does not see the Ryze who is there in the bush right next to him. Ryze must have been incredibly terrified and just scared witless and didn't want to move for fear of Lee Sin hearing him in the bush. The Lee Sin finding the Garen, missing Sonic Wave though. Garen going to turn around with Decisive Strike and spin on the Lee Sin, breaking his armor with that Black Cleaver. As in the top lane we see Karma and Darius dueling it out. Karma trying to peel off the Darius, pausing there for a second though, possibly trying to look for something in her inventory. I'm not quite sure, but she did pause for just long enough for Darius to be able to catch up and get the kill onto her in the 1v1. But Rammus has shown up top lane, being incredibly tanky. The Darius cannot take him out. The Moth No Mortius is popped. The magic damage from Rammus' ult being mitigated a bit there, but the Darius is going quite low. He gets taunted again. The Rammus being able to shut down the Darius over a long, slow fight, but he does have the more tankiness in that matchup than the Darius does, and they both have about equal damage at this point in the game, so the Rammus being able to take the kill in the end there, since the Darius' ult was not up. If the Darius' ult had been up, it might have been a different story, as we see blue team pushing up the mid lane now, using the Darius as a distraction in the top lane to be able to take out the inner mid lane turret and bring it back to 6-6 in terms of turrets on the board, and only about 1,000 or a little bit more than 1,000 gold lead for purple team. Blue team running towards the Baron now. They might want to go for a Baron play here, though. It would be very risky. They are going to be starting it, but many members of purple team are up. Only Misfortune being down. The Rammus certainly being alive here, and he is very tanky. He's going to be flashing forward, landing the taunt onto the Lux after she flashes away, having cast it right before she does so. She does turn around immediately after the flash, trying to auto-attack that Rammus because she's forced to. He taunted her very well, and he gets that kill. Actually, it goes over to Garen there. And the Lux goes down. The Lee Sin perhaps had the shop open, didn't realize that Garen found him basing, and goes down to the Garen ulti there. As purple team now is going to be starting the Baron, catching out two members of blue team and being able to start this Baron now. Lots of pings going down for blue team. They don't like the fact that purple team is going to be doing this Baron. They're bringing it low fairly slowly, none of them having really high sustain damage, aside from the Ryze, who could, but he went support, so he doesn't have very many items at this point in the game, but there's no contest from blue team, so the Baron does eventually go down to the combined efforts of the four members of purple team who were there doing it, and that is a Baron over to purple team, as well as a 3,000 gold lead for them at this point in the game. Blue team's inhibitor in the mid lane, though, has respawned, or is respawning soon, so... No, purple team's is respawning soon. Blue has respawned now, so they no longer have the super minions pushing up mid lane, and purple team with this Baron buff is probably going to want to go to the mid lane and try and take out an inhibitor there. Rammus powerballing in towards the Lucian, who dashes away with Relentless Pursuit. Rammus then settles for the Darius, landing his taunt onto him and pulling him back into his team. The Darius then trying to go for the Karma because he realizes he can't escape, but does not manage to take out the Karma, as Rammus is now dominating 17-3 with a ton of armor, being able to take out that Darius, the armor giving him the attack damage he needs to be able to complete that kill, as they are now going to push up into this inhibitor in the mid lane, take that out pretty easily. The Lee Sin gets hit by the Powerball from Rammus and then taunted up, goes down to the Garen. The Garen then using his ult to take out the low health Lucian, who is just behind his Nami. The Nami not being able to peel the Garen off enough to save the Lucian's life. The Nami then going to be taunted off of her fountain by the Rammus and pulled into the Misfortune ult. This looks like it's probably going to be the victory here for Purple Team, as all 5 members of them have Baron buff and are attacking the Nexus here. Yes, it's going to go down. That is a win for Purple Team. The 50 gold going over to Karma there, who got the last little auto attack with her soul bullets from the end of those fingers that she attacks with. Her auto attacks are very silly looking. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good one. See you tomorrow. Many thanks to House AD for the use of his replay. If you'd like to have your replay featured in this series, check the description. There's instructions there. Thank you for watching.